Alright guys, I've got a interesting lesson today, quite an important one. This is actually something that you'll hear me banging on about a lot, and I'm going to keep banging on about it until people stop doing it. And so what this is the issue that I see so often, which is unnecessary pawn moves, but particularly messing with the pawns that are supposed to be in front of your king, right? They are, in my view, they are like the Secret Service guys around the president, right? And they hold in tight. And one of the reasons is because, let's say, your king's castle to here, your king is then defending these three pawns, not that one. So that they have a defender, okay? And then if you can add a knight, maybe you might fianchetto your bishop as well, But they are so important. I mean, king safety is number one. Okay, doesn't matter. You can win material, you can gain space, you can have all these ideas, you can have your opponent really on the ropes. But if you get checkmated, doesn't count. None of that is worth anything. So I've got actually two games to share with you, both of which I play with the black pieces, and in both of which I think my opponent makes kind of similar errors. So let's run through these. So we have d4 and then d6. So black lion approach. This is a 10-minute rapid game, so I'm kind of comfortable with a black lion. This is going completely textbook so far. Right? If you want to know how the black lion works, this is how it works. Okay, now queen to c7, and then what we're ready to do is push up these pawns and ideally swing this knight round to here. But of course that is guarded because there is a pawn on e3 at the moment. White castles, declaring his hand early on. Okay, so I push h6, b3, g5 now, and bishop goes into the corner, and now the knight starts to pivot round, and my opponent does me a lovely favour by pushing e3 to e4. Thank you very much. That now frees up this square for my knight, so my knight swings round and he blocks. Okay, now is his idea to block this square, block my knight from coming to this square, but he's using his g-pawn. He's using the pawn that is right in front of his king. Okay, is it necessary? I mean, if the knight gets in there, how dangerous is that? That's what you have to ask yourself. He could have brought his bishop over to here, for example. Then if my knight goes, you've got bishop takes. That's another option anyway. Let's see how it all works out. So now I push g4 hitting his knight has to retreat, and h5 backs up the g4 pawn, and now he pushes another pawn. Shut up, Jag. Alright, now he pushes another pawn. Why do this? Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just preparing to castle, and now he takes. So he's decided it's a very good idea to open up lots of space on the king's side where his king is castled. My king, of course, is not castled in the middle of the board. The other thing about this, of course, is I do have 1, 2, 3 attackers on that pawn. So I decide to take the bishop. We have bishop takes, knight takes. Okay, and now I do have a knight right in this king's face. Queen pushes forward to d2, and now I push h4 up. I'm just trying to break open this space, castle, get both rooks gunning down on that king. We have pawn takes on c6, and now instead of simply recapturing, which I think would be very natural, I throw in a check. Okay, so queen b6 check. The king has only two options really, can move to there or there. Blocking with the rook isn't an option, and I had already figured out that the queen can't block there or there, and neither can the knight. So there we go. So the king moves, and now I capture this pawn. So obviously I'm threatening to take this pawn, and that might not be the end of the world. Okay, so this is something that I call like the human shield. So sometimes when you've got particularly one of your opponent's pawns right in your king's face, that can actually help defend your king. It sounds weird. I mean, the king can't move to either side, but none of your opponent's pieces can capture that pawn. It's impossible. It's against the rules of the game. White now pushes the pawn in front of his king one more time. And then we have rook takes, check, rook to there. Now skewers the king. King has to move, queen falls, and the game doesn't go on for an awful lot longer. We'll just whiz through the ending. We have a check there. I finally castle, and black takes my bishop. So this recapture comes with check. The rook drops, but I capture their rook, and I've just got an overwhelming advantage now. Takes, and then that's checkmate, or very nearly. Yeah, all he's got would be to interpose the rook, and then queen takes is checkmate. So there you go, just one example. Those pawns in front of your king, very important. Let's look at another one. This is a 30-minute game now. I've played both of these in the last 24 hours. And this is an e4 game. So we have the French defense with e6, d4, d5, takes, the French exchange variation, which I'm quite comfortable with. I've been playing the French now for a few months, so I'm quite happy with it. I bring out my knight, because with the bishop coming here, it's actually broken the queen's defense of the pawn on d4. Knight defends, now I pin the knight. Okay. Bishop comes out as a auxiliary defender for this pawn. There's not really no point capturing this knight right now, because we probably get queen out in the board, and that doesn't help me. So I develop my dark squared bishop, now looking down towards the king side, and also freeing up some space to help me castle. We have h3 kicking the bishop retreats. Okay, now this is, if white is planning to castle his king on the king side, you just have to question the wisdom of pushing the h-pawn at this point, okay? Especially when I've got a dark squared bishop lined up against that. Okay, so bishop retreats, king castles, and now I lift my queen, so I've got ideas of maybe castling long, the opposite side castling, and throwing my pawns up the board. We have rook across, black castles, and now g4. Okay, you can see a bit of a theme here. We've seen this before. Now, definitely one option here would be bishop takes g4, pawn takes g4, queen takes g4, and that king is looking naked and afraid in the corner. But I didn't see a rapid conclusion from that. However, I do still have this gorgeous bishop. So if you think that through, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, check, king comes to here. Yeah, I don't have another immediate check from there. Yeah, I do have. I've got queen here, and then the king runs away. Yeah, I didn't see a natural continuation. So I just drop my bishop back now. It's done the damage. These pawns have moved forwards. And we have bishop takes, and I think this is also questionable, because now h takes g6, okay, and that comes with another threat. This pawn is now completely undefended. Why is it undefended? Because it's moved forwards from the bloody king. Right? Normally that pawn would be defended. So if that pawn was here, then rook takes pawn is a no-go, because the king takes the rook, you see. It's really that simple. Anyway, so we have a bit of a push here. Bishop has a prod at my rook, and I simply block it with f6. Okay, so the bishop has to retreat, and now the pawn falls. Now bishop moves again, queen takes g4, and this is now, going to be a world of pain. Okay, king to there, rook in the corner. There's only two legal moves. You can interpose the knight, which is completely the wrong move. White should have played the king there. Interpose the knight, and now rook takes. That's checkmate, because the queen's guarding that square. So can you see how quickly things can collapse when you mess with the pawns in front of your king? Now look at where my king is here. Right, 3 pawns all nice and tight. Previous game, 2 pawns. Okay, still there. You've got to treat. All right, not all pawns are equal. This is the thing. We can get stuck in this idea of that a pawn is worth 1. A pawn is worth 1. Well, it's not, because a pawn that's directly in front of your king, preventing checks and horrible things, is a valuable pawn. Other pawns, for example, when we have an opposite side castling situation like this, these pawns here, they can be they can be useful. You can use them as a battering ram. You can use them as kamikaze pilots. You send them flying up the board to swap themselves off with your opponent's valuable pawns, the ones that are guarding his king, the king's bodyguard, right? Sometimes they can actually be less than useful. Sometimes you actually want to get them out of the way so you can get to that king, right? So pawns aren't worth one, right? It's just all other things being equal, pawns are roughly worth one in terms of the nominal material value. But I really want you to drill into your head. Those pawns in front of your king, do not touch the pawn unless you've got a really, really good reason to do it. I can't put it any clearer than that. Keep doing that. I'm just going to go and pull the cockerel's neck. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. See you soon.